All right, you got your cuppa?
Yeah, man, good to go.
Should we start with why is it so difficult to get a good cup of tea in America? What brand do you go with nowadays?
Man, I got Yorkshire tea all the way.
So where do you get that from? Is that a public special?
That is Harris Tea special. We had to find that one. I was stuck for a while, and then I got sent it by family for the first time in years. And then once I was back on it, it was once you've had a good cuppa, you've got to stick to it.
No, I know. And it's the same with bacon as well. Should we bash American bacon while we're at it? Why is it so thin?
There's definitely no good bacon here. I can't. Even going back home for Christmas, that was one of the best. And I'm not a huge bacon person, or at least I didn't think I was until I went back, and it's night and day different.
It is. And it's got to be. You have to be able to chew it a little bit. Like I don't like it when it just breaks in half, and that's how people want it here. And I'm never going to be on board with it.
No, it's not. It's not something for me. And I said the thing here is like I know it's supposed to be sweeter, but it's like no, it's more like a Twizzler. You know what I mean? Like it's just like it's not even. I don't remotely enjoy it. If I go anywhere for breakfast and that's the option, I'm never choosing. I don't mind the sausage that they do here. It's a bit different when they put it in the little paddy and whatnot.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, you can't be bacon. A proper English sausage. That was another one I'd forgotten about. A proper thick sausage.
No, I'm with you. Well, welcome to the first official episode of Kicking It with Deeley, and it hasn't actually even been announced yet. We're recording in advance, so thanks for being the first guest on the show, man.
Honored to be here, mate.
Yeah, we couldn't really start anywhere else, could we?
I was gonna say, I think from the first 2-3 days that we met, we were already catching strays from teammates at Leeds McRae of how much we talk and don't shut up.
Yeah, James Galvani, if I recall, if it's all right to call him out.
Galvani, Smudge, on that bus ride to where were we going? Was it Chawan? We went to that water park or where we went?
Wild.
Yeah.
Good memories, mate. Good memories. So, tell everyone just a little bit about you and your journey. I think it's a good place to start. How obviously moving multiple different countries, living in, experiencing those environments. Just talk through that a little.
Yeah. So, grew up in England. Was born in Leeds, but spent my entire life in Newcastle. So that's my entire life there is growing up in Newcastle. Right on the nice warm beach in Whitley Bay. Can honestly say there's probably count on one hand how many warm summer days I spent down there, but loved it down there. And obviously you and I both know like Newcastle is notorious for being like a huge football loving, and honestly that's like a religion there. I wasn't ever a Newcastle fan, but I mean just being immersed in that life. Football's been my absolute love and joy from a kid all the way through to now. And so, the aim was always like any young English lad who's playing was to go pro. And as I got old and realized not quite that good. But obviously the opportunity to come out to the US at 16, 17, 18 started to become something that I would, flirt the idea with. And when it became a reality, it was a no-brainer to, continue from a studying point of view, but also to go and play. And, from all the stories and what we were seeing, and from teammates that I had in the year above at Gateshead, where I was playing at the time, when they came out here, it was just, phenomenal to see like they were out here playing at what looked like a professional level with the facilities, the quality, and, one of the best decisions I ever made was, jumping on that, coming away. Obviously miss my family, and that's the hardest part of any of this journey. Came out to North Carolina 2014, played at Leeds McRae for 4 years. Little college nestled away in the mountains near App State, and it was a beautiful place. Never lived anywhere like that in my life. I didn't expect it to be quite as quiet as what it was, but in many ways that was the best part. You go from living in, I was never in like a big city, but Newcastle is obviously popular, big, busy. and then to go from like, you know, the one stoplight in Banner Elk and just seeing nothing but students was mad. But yeah, came out there, did that, and graduated. Moved to Australia briefly. It's where my family moved to when I came out here for my freshman year. Lived there for a few months. Loved it. It's a beautiful place. I'll be honest, I think it's just too hot for me. I think even yesterday I was working summer camp here, and it's like 100 Fahrenheit, and I'm just like lobster. I had to wear red today to try and take away the fact that my face is so red. I'm still not used to that heat. It's bloody ridiculous. But yeah, lived there for a few months and then came back and realized there's more opportunity here from what I want to do and coaching in the youth game primarily, and I can make a full-time job of it here. And yeah, I've been here since I guess 2018 when I moved back fully in Asheville, and now living here with my family and whatnot in our house out in the Leicester in the country, and losing the accent day by day and sounding more American as the weeks go by.
It's not a good thing. Don't do that.
It's not a good thing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
No one knows that I'm English anymore. I've lost it.
Terrible. When you think about, obviously you came back after spending a little bit of time in Australia. You obviously did some really great things for a really small youth club in Asheville, and then grew that club, Asheville Shield, which obviously isn't where you're at now. But talk through that a little bit. What was that like? Building such a small...
Yeah, it was cool. It was different. You know, from having the aspirations to go pro and, you know, playing at a fairly decent youth level, and then obviously the collegiate level. You know, it's not the top level, and obviously there's levels and levels and levels above where in which, you know, we're playing at, but you know, you get accustomed to the standards, intensity. You know, the kids that I was playing with growing up were high level and realistically aiming for pro contracts, to then kind of going into this like small club where that wasn't quite the level in which the players and we had within the club, and it was a very different feel to it, and it just kind of took me back to when I really started playing football, and I played with just my friends. I didn't really, you know, it was a dream to be a pro, but it was more like a dream of being a billionaire, but it's not going to happen overnight. And it was more of like something I wanted to be, I didn't think was realistic. And it was actually really nice to just be back and around an environment where people just played the sport because they love the sport, not because they have a high aspiration to make a life out of it.
Parents
well, yeah, I mean, the parent, that's always the difficult part, understanding and explaining to parents that the kid isn't quite the next Messi or anywhere near that. But yeah, it was a challenge, but it was really rewarding. Just getting to know the different stories. I mean, as you can imagine, in any youth level, you know, there's a wide variety within every team of, you know, kids that are decent and just like to play and they're just naturally good at it. Kids that are absolutely grinding and putting in work and they're not quite very good. And then kids that love it and it's their true passion, like myself. I mean, it's just like life, you know what I mean? Like there's people that stroll through it and get things not by luck, but just by being naturally good at what they do, but they don't really enjoy it. And I think it's funny and interesting to see that even from kids I've coached from like 7, 8, 9, all the way through to 19, you can already see those kind of characteristics where it's like kids struggle to look at the person beside them who doesn't train as hard or work as hard, but is much better player than what they are. And they're putting in all this effort and all this constant, you know, commitment and whatnot. And they're just a shadow of that player, and it's tough to watch and tough to coach at times, I'll be honest.
No, I couldn't agree more, and it's the same with anything, right? Like at the end of the day, no matter what, sometimes you have it and sometimes you don't, and it just is what it is. Well, when you think about what you did at Asheville Shield and the way you scaled the club, I don't know the exact numbers around there were this many teams and then this many teams when you left. What went into sort of that growth phase that the club went through, and from your perspective, what allowed you to do that?
So when the first kind of fall season that started there would have been 2018, 2018. And we started the season with kind of 2.5 teams, 3 teams, obviously, but we constantly had to have players kind of guest play in between. Obviously, it's a little bit more flexible in the US than what it was from what I grew up with back home in terms of, mitigating and playing up and down, whatever. So we basically had 3 teams, and we had about 30 some players. Right before COVID hit was when we were at our peak, and we were just hitting 200 players. So in the span of between like 2.5 to 3.5 years, we had, constantly kind of turned over and changed. The growth came from many, many different things. We did add younger age groups, and tried to build like an academy kind of phase and a foundation. But ultimately, it came from just consistency. I was really lucky that I was able to hire certain individuals who were passionate like myself, come from a different background and culture that Asheville currently has, people that came from outside of the area. And we were just able to be a little bit more hands-on than other clubs in the area because of the sheer size of them in comparison to us. We were a bit of a niche kind of club because of how small we were, so we could be very hands-on. I was able to know every single player within the club and almost every single parent, whereas the club I'm at now, it's a lot bigger and I can't quite have that one-to-one relationship that I did have. Just purely from a time management point of view, I can't be everywhere. So it's just really good to be very close with everyone within and kind of have a bit of an effect on almost every team, even though I wasn't coaching them directly, because I knew their journey and where they'd come from. And, we had players with us from the start of that who were a huge part of helping us grow through word of mouth, players and parents wise. And yeah, it was really rewarding to kind of see it just grow naturally. We didn't really spend much money on advertisement or anything like that. It was just purely, this is who we are, this is what we do. We did start to post a lot more on our social page, and that was, a bit of like the brand, and adopted the common term of like one club, one family. But I felt like we really embodied that of just, it didn't matter how old you were, you knew the person at the youngest team. If you were the youngest team, you knew and you aspired to be in that oldest team. And the individuals and the families we had were fantastic. And that really made a difference. There was no real headaches. Everyone bought into it and was very aware that we were a little bit different than probably what they'd had at another club, whether they'd moved out of town or had lived within for their whole life. And people just bought into it and embraced it as opposed to being against it. And I remember I'd always get on a phone call, if you called me and said, why should I choose you over someone else? And I'd only say to myself, I can't tell you that, because the truth is, what we provide might be different and not what you need right now. The only thing I can say is come out and see it, and you'll see why we are different and what the opportunities we can provide. But the reality was, families could have 2 siblings, boy and a girl, older, younger, whatever. And for one, it might be perfect. And for the other one, we couldn't provide them what they needed or what they wanted. And that's okay. That's like, yes. I said, that's life. But I was just always really honest and open with everyone. I think that's the best way to be. You can't bullshit to them.
I agree. I think, and we talk about it a lot in mortgage too, right? Obviously, there's a lot of mortgage companies, and culture is something that every single company talks about. But it's really hard to sell, because until you touch it and you feel it, it's just words. We try to lean on validating stories a lot of the time, like here's example A, B, C, and of course we have those. But it's definitely a bit of a buzzword, and like you're talking about, until you're there and you experience it and you feel it, it's nothing more than that.
Yeah, so it's like anything. You gotta, if you're paying for a subscription to anything, if you don't enjoy it, you cancel it. Whether that's TV, whether that's a gym member, whatever. And so I think, actions speak louder than words. And that was the biggest thing that I just constantly kind of spoke with my coaches. When I started, it was just me and one other coach. and it was just me and her, and we did everything. And she was brilliant, and she's a professional player now and playing internationally. And it was huge to now look back on that experience that those kids had with her in particular. But it was just the two of us. And then also when we added in more and more coaches, it was like, look, guys, like this is the culture where we're really hands on. We're giving this extra stuff, and it was just great to see. Like, I'm really grateful for all the coaches and the connections that I made over that time too, because without them, we wouldn't have grown. I wouldn't have developed in the way in which I have from learning from them as well. And yeah, just all around, it was a really healthy exchange of development on and off the field. And yeah, it certainly shaped me to be the director and knowledge that I have within the game now.
Yeah. And then you moved to the big club in town, right? I'll say this out loud. Asheville Shield obviously started because of some disgruntled parents, that ultimately, I think it's fair to say maybe their kids weren't quite good enough to make it. And there was some event that obviously me or you, obviously weren't present to that, but obviously I've heard from yourself on it. What's that been like? You're currently obviously a director on the boys' side there. How's it different to Asheville Shield?
It's hugely different. I think, when I started that Shield, as kind of mentioned there, it kind of took me back to why I loved the game, just the pure basics, just the absolute fundamentals, playing with your mates, and it's fun and it's a game, and the result isn't everything. And me, like I kind of down losing. When 100%. I play to win. It's the hard part now of being the dad. Like a 3-year-old that wants to race me and play football with me and can't handle the losing, and I'm like,
better not let him win.
I'm not letting you beat me. But when I flipped the switch, it was tough because it was never something I'd truthfully thought about. I never viewed it as we were competitors, but naturally in the business world, that essentially was what we were. And so it'd never really been something I had my eye on. But with the way that things started to change at Shields, the people at the top kind of changed a little bit and kind of went a little bit sour. We didn't see eye to eye on things, and that's life. It happens. But the way in which it was handled and went really hurt me a little bit. And if I'm honest, I almost just completely stopped within the youth game and coaching. And so when I kind of flirted with the idea of getting in touch with the current director here on the boys' side, it was like with a lot of hesitancy. And I was really honest and upfront with him and explained, like, I didn't ever think we'd have this conversation. I still don't know if I'm completely into this conversation. I don't even know if I want to coach anymore because of the kind of treatment that I'd got towards the end. But then we had some really good conversations and spoke with more and more people within the club. And when I jumped across, I didn't quite grasp the sheer size and the volume of what it was. And, going from a club where I wore every single hat that was needed, whether it was setting up fields, coaching, registration, social media, to then going in and being like, this is your lane. And obviously I do multiple tasks outside of my, peripheral and whatnot, but we have so many different people in all these different cogs, and it was great to be in an organization where we were all on the same page, all striving towards the same kind of destination, and with the kids at the forefront. But the biggest difference is just purely because of the amount of levels and teams we have within the club in each age group, on the boys' side in particular. We have that balance of, like, there are teams within the club that are like, they want to be playing on the highest level team, but truthfully they're not quite there, but they're equally happy to just be there and play and enjoy playing football because it's a sport they enjoy. And then on the flip side, we have kids that are like, no, I want to go pro. I want to go play at the highest collegiate level. I want to go D1, D2, wherever it may be. And, we had a couple of people go and play college from Shield. But in contrast, it was, like you said, it's like 1 in 40, whereas in all of, like, our top kind of first and second teams, there's a handful of people who are realistically pushing to go to a high level we've had in my U13 group alone this year, we've had 2 boys sign with Charlotte FC to join their U14 academy team, which is, it's amazing. Does it mean they'll go pro? No. We both know how small that percentage is of youth kids that do go on and make it, but it's really cool to have gone from just being able to foster the love to now being in an environment where I'm creating and developing players to go and play at the highest level. But at the same time, that experience at Shield has allowed me to kind of bring those two together and be like, look, like, in order to get to the top, you just have to love the game. There's a lot that comes into it, development, and you can't lose that passion. And so don't lose sight of why you joined the sport in the first place. But at the same time, I'm going to push you as hard as I can to reach the level that you want to get to. And it was, honestly, in hindsight, when I look back at it now, it's probably been the best thing to happen from a development point of view. Really enjoy being able to push players. I was blessed that the first group that I coached the last 2 years was an unbelievable group, and we had some fantastic experiences over the last 2 years. And just parent group and players alone really helped bring back the love of coaching for me, and it's been a fantastic start so far. And I've been here for, I think, three years now.
Good. When you think about, and you said it just then, such a small percentage of these players are actually gonna even play in college, right? Let alone go pro. The barriers, though, that I think exist for families at the moment and it's not just football. I think it's multiple sports in America, right? I think about when I was younger in England, and yourself as well, how easy and inexpensive it was to just go join a team and be able to play, versus in America where you're looking at, 3,000 to 4,000, potentially, at a level, which again, it's a good level, but nothing where, these guys aren't going to go, play pro. A lot of them won't go to college, and there's no real ROI potentially on the investment, that families have to make. What do you think about like the barriers that are in place, and how, as a country, do we start to break through those a little bit and make it more achievable for families to, have their kids play?
I mean, I don't think we've got enough time.
I mean, I know it's a loaded one, but it is a topic.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fair question, and as you can imagine, we get asked it a lot. I'm lucky in the fact that within the club I'm in now, we offer a lot of financial aid for families that, if that is a huge hurdle, we are very generous, and I love that, because I think football is a game where you don't need to speak the same language to play it. It's a universal language. I love seeing, like, I used to go on holiday, Turkey, Greece, around the world, and the matter.
Was that holiday, or maybe you need to go back to Turkey?
I need to go back to
get that hairline fixed. I
went for the wrong reason. I went for drinking there. But yeah, no, I think for it being such a simple sport to play in, and this goes for any sport really. I think the price of everything, and obviously it's just like anything in the world these days, the prices are just skyrocketing. There's nothing cheap outside of just doing it on your own. And it is sad because, I've got 2 boys now. I've got a third one coming in November, and me and my wife, we speak all the time, and it's just like, how do you make it work? I hope not. I won't push it, but I hope, my boys go on and love football in the way that I have. If they played baseball, some crap sport like that, I'd be devastated.
I just find it funny that you said "I hope" like it's a choice. Is it a choice?
I mean, if you had a camera in my house right now, I can probably count about 20 to 25 footballs around the house, about 4 or 5 in every room. And what I do love at the moment is Noah, my oldest in particular, just starts passing it back and forward against the wall, and he's like, "Dad, look, I'm practicing," and I'm trying not to push it. Because as we know, like I said, I don't want it to turn him off anything. I would love nothing more than being able to go and watch my kid play and love the sport that I've used to travel the world. And I think that's the beauty of sport and why I do what I do. If it wasn't for football, I would have never came to the US. I wouldn't have I did an Asian tour when I was playing in Australia. You know, I've been to like 4 or 5 different continents purely through football alone, and I want that not just for my kids. I want that for kids that I coach. But that financial barrier, like I said, it is massive. And the sad part is I don't see it changing anytime soon. I've seen certain kind of bigger clubs, like, you know, in the pro kind of levels and the USL levels, who have started their youth programs, have started to offer, you know, free membership for like their top level players, which is a great start. And it's a great way to kind of give back and help push. But then it's the same argument, well, you're only pushing the top, you know, 1% of your club if you've got 3 or 4 teams. I know that's a start, and so I can't complain because it is massive and it's amazing because not everyone can do it. But it is a struggle because, you know, if whether you've got 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, 4, you know, affording 1 is tough. Affording 2 is rough. 3, you're like, and 4. And if they're all in different sports, or if they're all in the same sport, they're all on different schedules. And, you know, depending on where you live, you know, if you're in a bigger kind of city area like Charlotte and you're playing a sport, I'm sure there's, you know, I can speak football and there's clubs everywhere, but you're still traveling. And, you know, for us in Asheville, we are geographically like handcuffed, and I love living here, but that's one of the really hard parts of sport is, you know, any away game, the closest away game we have is 2 hours. Yeah. And it's like, you know, that's whether you're playing on Saturday or Sunday, it doesn't really matter. Like that's your whole day gone. And it's,
well,
that's
and in addition, right, it's like, you know, we talked about the cost just for the membership, but then you look at what it costs that day, the gas, the food that you have to get. And then obviously you've been fortunate to coach a couple of teams which have gone all the way through, right, to national tournaments and all the way to California. And now for families, I mean, and I'd be the same if my kid's playing in something like that, I'm going to make sure I'm going to be there no matter what, no matter how much it costs. And I know you'd be the same. But then that's another how much for families on top and the hotel rooms that goes into it. And yeah, I just think it's a really interesting thing, probably for US soccer to really look at some point. And I don't know what they do to support. I'm uneducated on the topic, but ultimately, if America's going to ever do anything on the world stage, something's got to change to make sure that the top players are captured and ultimately given the opportunity to thrive, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, we went to the first year I was here, we went to nationals in California, and it was an amazing experience. You know, the boys won regionals. We fly out to California like 3 weeks later for another event, and we ended up losing on penalties in true English fashion. But like the trip, as you can imagine, was unbelievable. But I remember sitting there. I can't remember if it was the first or second night. It was like a 5 or 6 day trip, like 5 days, and we all flew in 2 days before the games. 1 day to obviously just get, you know, travel wise. Day 2 was we went and trained, get used to the, you know, it's bloody hot out there. July in California. There's no way a white English man like me should be out there. I was baking. But we went out there, trained, and it was, you know, brilliant. We did pool recovery, and we tried to make it as, you know, professional and just memorable as possible while also doing a bit of touristy kind of stuff. But I sat with the parents one of the nights at the hotel, and, you know, we all just having a few drinks as you do. And they started talking about how much it kind of cost, like this year alone, for like, because of this tournament in particular. And it was just a really, I don't want to say put a downer, but it was like a really like, that's mental. And it wasn't in a negative connotation. They were like, you know, like you just said there, you know, what an experience this is. My kid will never forget this. And honestly, they won't either. Like they, you know, the beauty of the way in which it is, like, you know, this team has been together since these kids were like 10 years old. And this was when they were U16, and so they played in a rec team, they played in academy teams, then they've done classic. So honestly, it's been like a 10-year journey, and now all of a sudden they've traveled as a group across to California. They're playing. It was amazing, and I loved that I was a part of it. But then obviously from a financial and a family point of view, it was like, wow, like, you know, you take it for granted, or I take it for granted sometimes, of like, you know, the cost that does go into it. You know, I'm privileged that I get paid and it's a full-time job for me. But obviously there is that hard element of, you know, it just costs a lot, and there's a lot of travel that comes with it, let alone the membership. And you know, the memories won't be forgotten. And you know, my dad, I'm lucky that my dad in particular always was like, similar to what we just said there, you know, I don't want you to ever miss an opportunity because of money. I'll worry about the money, you don't worry about it. If you want to do something, I'll find a way to make it work. And I'm probably never told him enough, but I'm just so, you know, grateful that was always the mentality that he had, and the opportunities I've gotten and in life and in sport. And you know, a lot of these families are in the same boat. But I feel like, you know, with just the price of life and everything, it continues to escalate, and it's hard because we all know there's kids and families that aren't that lucky, and you know, even paying the membership is the hardest thing, let alone then actually getting to a game and getting to a tournament and getting to, and it is sad whether the player's good or not. You know, I mean, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like, if a player wants to play any sport and their restraint is money, like that hurts, because it's nothing on the kids. You know what I mean? And then truthfully, like, you know what I mean, so you could argue and say it's on the parent, but like, that's such a harsh, you know, reality. You know what I mean? You don't know what they're going through, you don't know what their situation is, and I think that's a really difficult one. But it is wild in comparison when you think of the cost of sport and what we grew up with. And I'm sure it's more expensive now back home than what it was when we grew up. But again, you're comparing something up here to down here, and it is mind blowing. But the other part I always go is like, I can't speak for yourself and your experience, you know, when you were playing, but like, for my youth club, in American terms, we were a rec team. We trained once a week. It was my mate's dad and then my dad, and they did it together. It was a 1 hour session. It wasn't until I was at 14 when I joined a professional academy where it became, I think it was only 2 sessions a week, maybe 3 at the most.
Yeah.
And obviously that's, you know, the pro academies where it's free and they cover it for you. But, you know, that was where I started to do like a bit of a longer session, and I would travel to get there. But outside of that, it was 15 minutes down the road. The games were maximum 20 to 25 minutes away. And if it was 25 minutes away, you're like, you know,
that's a bit of a journey.
What trek that is. Whereas now I'm like, 2 hours, that's not bad. I go Greensboro on Thursday for a 4 or 5 day event. I'm like, 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also probably a cultural difference as well, right? On some level. And maybe it's just times have changed. I mean, because even though it was once a week training, I mean, as soon as, you know, the bell went at school for lunchtime, you know, it's football match at lunch, right? And then as soon as, you know, school is done for the day, grab a couple of jumpers and throw them down in the road and play until dinner was ready, and then eat dinner and then come back out and play until it was dark. I mean, that was what it was every day. And I guess we've probably moved away from that, you know, as a society on some level. And I know it's the same for you, but for my kids, like, that's one of the big things. Like, I hate that, or I hope that they're going to get to experience that type of thing, and we'll hate it if they don't, but I guess we'll just have to see.
Yeah, it's different. Like, you know, I went back to England for the first time in 10 years at Christmas, and, you know, walking with my boys and my wife, walking around where I grew up, and I was like, oh, I used to come down here and there's a cage, 2 football goals, and it's just boxed in. I was like, I used to love coming down here. I said Saturday mornings, whether I'd had a game in the morning or not, it didn't matter. I'd come down in the afternoon.
Lovely. Lucasade. Probably banned.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, I wouldn't give it to my kids now, I'll tell you that. Pop into Home Bargains and it was absolute meal deal essentially.
Yeah.
But you just play heads and bodies and red horse, and it would be like, that was my life, like you said. You know, playing in the back lane, using wheelie bins as my posts, playing in the garden, pinging balls and recreating goals that I've just seen on Match of the Day or on the Prem the day before. And I think that is a big difference here, is people pay to play, but a lot of time that is the only playing that they do. And, you know, these kids do train a lot. They train more than what I did in a professional environment. You know, my club team was coached once a week, and the equivalent level here is coached 3 sessions a week. minimum, 2, 3. And this summer, I just saw about 4 or 5 weeks ago, they opened a very similar cage type thing in West Asheville, and I was buzzing. I was like a little kid. We went down the next day with Noah and kicked the ball around as a family. And I'm like sending pictures to all the teams I coach, saying like, a lot of you ask me for private training in the club, and I'm like, I know I can obviously help develop players, but if you really want to help develop your kid, take them here, get a group, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids, and let them just play. Like, don't give them rules, don't give them anything. I don't need to be there. You don't need to be there. The kids will figure a way to create, because that's all it is. It's creativity, inspire it, and that's the only way to kind of, I think, catch up to the rest of the world. Because the other part that I find mad, like, coaching any teams I've coached here, is it's improving. I'll give it that. I wish the Club World Cup was a bit more exciting than what it is.
Monday 3 p.m. kickoff probably ain't gonna.
I mean, it's brutal.
Yeah.
But I think, like, I coach a group, and I'm like, who's your favorite team? Who's your favorite player? They're like, oh, the Lakers. I'm like, what do you mean the Lakers? Like, who's your Prem team? Who's your MLS team? They're like, oh, what's that? Like, that's mind blowing. Whereas, the last team I coached in England when I left was like, I was 17, 18. It was a U7 or 8 boys team for my little cousin, and all the boys, whether they were massive Newcastle fans or not, which obviously majority were, every session they're in a full kit of some club, mainly black and white stripes, but they had all their favorite players. And if we did any type of game or whatever, they hit a shot and they shout, oh, it's so-and-so or whatever. They're doing celebrations. And, all I ever remember, anytime the ball rolls to me, it's, you know what I mean? And like the kids, I could shout Gerald in my session here. They were like, who the f***'s that, man? Yeah. Like, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, there's not that. I feel like that is such a different culture in that sense. And that part hurts me a little bit, because I miss that. And I love the few kind of little groups and boys that I have that I coach, that do have that about them. And, they try and give me crap for Bournemouth. So it's brilliant that Bournemouth were actually not bad this year. And so I love that little, we can have a bit of football banter, because I miss that, like that. That's what football is about, sport. You know what I mean? But I'm not into NBA or anything like that. And that's not my
crap.
Yeah, like, it's not wasting my time on that.
Yeah. Well, if US Soccer or Pochettino himself are listening, we're here to help if needed.
They need a lot of help at the moment.
They do.
I don't know how this next World Cup's going to go for them.